Hi, I'm Lisa Sabaniak from Life Like You Mean It. And today's video, we're going to take a quick look at the power of a women's circle. So this video is in three parts. First, we're going to have a look at the role that women played in society long time ago. Second, we're going to look at the downfall of the divine feminine. And three, we are going to look at the divine feminine rising again, including women's circles. So let's get started. So before we get started, a video that I made not that long ago about being a priestess of the goddess, which you can watch right here, or of course the link is in the description, would be a great starting point for you with this. So you have a little bit more understanding about divine feminine. Now, that being said, let's look at part one, which is the previous role that women played in society. We're going all the way back into tribal communities, really, where society is nothing like what we know it to be like now. But did you know that in those early days of culture and tribal societies, that women were quite revered? Right? Women were revered. The divine feminine energy within women was really sacred. And this was because of number one, the acknowledgement of our ability to actually create human life and then to birth that human life. And also, medicine women, for example, the sage or the crone of the society or the tribe was very, very respected, where people would actually go for sage advice, right? And then you also have the aspect of that medicine woman type of placement within that tribe, where the woman knew the different types of herbs to use for headaches or sprains or cuts or whatever. And of course, there were medicine men as well, right? It's really important that as we look at this, we don't try to look at it versus as we don't try to look at it as divine feminine versus divine masculine. That back in this time frame that we were looking at here, everything was very equal. Everything was respected in equal amounts. So while we're talking right now about the divine feminine and why that energy was really respected and revered, there are equal number of points that we could say about the divine masculine energy. Now, some of the ways that women were revered in their tribal societies had nothing to do, no comparison with male energy. And this would be our menstrual cycle, right? Because men obviously don't have that cycle. And it didn't take long for early tribes to realize that women bled with patterns of the moon. And so, this idea you may have seen in society now on different social media platforms, the idea of a red tent. And red tents were really things that existed. They might not necessarily have been red or even necessarily a tent, but in some cases they really were. And the premise here is this was a place for women to congregate together within the tribe and bleed together. It was sacred. It was divine. It was respected. It was well understood. This was a release of all the energies, because part of that kind of medicine woman energy that was about was the understanding that women's wombs are a space to transmute the energy of themselves, but then all of those around them. And so the ability to bleed was this ability to release this energy. And this would include the energy of the men within the tribe. So this was a very respected thing. Obviously, the period stops when she is pregnant. So there's an understanding there of this part of that cycle, as well as what that means, that she is fertile. She has the ability to carry a child, but that she's not currently carrying a child, right? There's all kinds of different meanings behind this and sacredness to this. And women would literally go and bleed together. They would remove themselves from the tribe. The men would pick up the duties of the women during that time. The men would take care of the women by bringing in sustenance for them. And their only job was to release this energy to bleed during this time. And as women went into menopause, those kind of red tents turned into purple tents, right? Where menopausal women also were able to take time every month to go and be together to celebrate being a woman and everything that that meant. Because even without the bleed, the womb space is still there. And if the womb space is there, then you've got the energies coming in to transmute. So a menopausal woman is still transmuting energy for the whole tribe, or in this case, our whole community. And so it's still necessary for her to go and release. She's just not physically doing that with the flow of blood. So part two of our video, looking very, very briefly at the fall of the divine feminine, right? Whatever you want to look at as being the cause, it's like a marriage breakdown in terms of my way of looking at it, where it's usually not one thing that happens, one person at fault, and everything comes crumbling down from that point. And so this is very similar. There's a lot of information out there about religion having its hand in here, about masculine energy. I was going to say divine masculine energy, but not really divine if you're looking at overpowering somebody else. So, kind of a toxic masculine energy that came into play. And there's all kinds of different facets of this. So, rather than getting into religion or politics or anything like that, we can just look at the idea that at some point over the course of time, not one exact point, but over the stretch of time here, that divine feminine energy that was revered started to be looked at as being quite powerful and started to become a divide, which instead of looking at the beauty of the power within the divine feminine, matching the beauty of the power in the divine masculine, it became a general way for society to look at things where I must win. And for me to win, somebody else must lose. And in this case, for us to have power means that somebody else has to be disempowered. And that's what I take from this, whether you want to look at religion's roles, politics roles, or any other role involved here with bringing down the feminine energy. It really all is the same kind of core root concept, is that society started looking at winners versus losers. Yeah. And in this case, the men or masculine energy needed to dominate or win or be empowered. And the only way to do that through the eyes of society at that time was to then have a disempowered, right? Not dominant, but dominated over energy of the feminine. And so that's what started to happen. And that spawned things like the witch trials and lots of other different things that have happened all throughout time to really disempower women, right? For them to not be looked at as being equal, not to have the right to vote or the right to an education or any of these types of things, is really that someone over the course of time, many different someones over the course of time, looked at that power that was being exuded from the feminine and feared it, right? And literally thought if they are powerful, then the masculine has to be disempowered. We don't want that. So we're going to turn the tables. They didn't have any concept of understanding that both can be equal, that you don't have to have a dominant and a submissive, that you can actually have equal standing within society. Side note, if you're loving this video as much as I know you are, go on and check out my beautiful playlist about working with the moon. In this playlist, I go over each of the chakras and we talk about how you can do some shadow work to prepare for a full moon so you may release what you are ready to release, and then start doing the work to prepare for the new moon so that you can replace that energy with something that serves you and allows you to heal, all with the new moon. Now we're into part three with our rising again, right? Of course, you are going to have people all along, men included, but especially women, all along this whole time period where they are going to protest. Of course, naturally. And there's always going to be some underground movements, right? It's not like the divine feminine has gone, unworshipped or unnoticed or unrespected this entire time. Absolutely not. Of course, there's been a lot of women and men out there that have been working behind the scenes all of these years. But for whatever reason, and again, there's many of them astrologically speaking, and just the evolution of the planet and individual souls, there's lots of factors involved, but for whatever reason, now is the time that we are starting to rise again. And that rising again is really about raising awareness. It's about raising awareness of our past, of that history, of women being equal and why and what that meant and how we celebrated that to the demise to now rising back up. And it's really important that we understand that, again, this isn't a power struggle. This is equality that we just maybe don't understand fully, not everybody in our society, because there are still a lot of people that think you have to have a winner, and which means you need to have a loser. Whereas those who are rising again are, for the most part, absolutely respectful of divine masculine energy as much as they are divine feminine energy. And it's not looking for one ruling energy for the other to then be disempowered or submissive. And this is where the power of a women's circle lays, because it's in these women's circles that we start to remember, we start to relearn, we start to awaken these different parts of ourselves that have always known this information, but maybe consciously have set it aside. So it's the opportunity to bond with other women, to start connecting again with our own cycles, whether we are menopausal, prepubescent, or we are actually bleeding, or we're pregnant, right? To actually get in touch with our own cycle, link it and sync it to the moon and the moon cycle, to start paying attention to these things again and allowing ourselves to rise, allowing the divine feminine energy to rise again, right? Through ritual, through ceremony, and through awareness and understanding. I hope this video helped and inspired you. It's always an honor for me to serve you in this way. If you haven't already, I'd love for you to subscribe and go ahead and click on that gray icon so that you never miss a notification of my videos. Bless.